the good outcomes for not only you, but the people who've invested in you, the people who you've convinced to come along on this adventure that you have a commitment to, your family, your friends, all the sacrifices that you make. It's a very sacrificial kind of role that you're taking on when you do it, but the rewards are tremendous. I mean, being able to sit back and say, this is what I did, it's one of the great accomplishments of my life.
Welcome back to Evolving Your Workplace. I'm Carol Schultz. Today's episode, we are going to address the following question. Who is the most important person in a company? In your company, the CEO, the CTO, the CFO, etc. I think the answer may surprise some leaders out there, and that's why we're here. If you're new to running a company or want to ensure that yours has a thriving culture, this one is for you. I'm joined by expert Matt DeWolf, a successful founder and CEO. I've known Matt a long time, and I'm glad to have him on the show. Matt, before we dive into the topic, kind of give our listeners an overview and a little insight into your time as a leader, both as a founder and then the CEO.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much, one of those stories where I love just getting after stuff and making a difference in people's lives. That's the thing that really motivates me the most. And that's my anchor point for everything in my career. Mm-hmm. And then, it just so happens that when you have that kind of orientation, a lot of people ask you to take things on. So a lot of things have just kind of come to me and people have said, hey, would you like to take on this project? We need somebody, to get after it. And I ask a few questions and I say, that sounds amazing. Let's go do it. I mean, that is the essence of my career right there, is really just aligning myself with stuff that I really love to do, making sure that is the primary focus of what I'm working on every day. And then the fact that leadership kind of comes along with that is just one of the added perks or benefits, if you can say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's terrific. So, personally, I know the answer to the question I'm about to ask you, or what I believe it is, but I'm curious as, what your answer is. Who do you believe is the most important person in a company?
Whoever is talking to the customer at that particular point in time. I'm a very market focused person.
Yeah.
In the sense that we live in a very competitive society, environment, marketplace. People have all kinds of choices. And just when you think you've got it licked, there's a competitor who shows up with something that's pretty exciting. And so my orientation is to say, let's not argue with the market about what they want. Let's give the market what they want, as long as, it can be a win-win for both of us. And that obviously our company is making a profit and growing and evolving, and the customer is doing the same. Mm-hmm. So I really am hyper-focused on delivering what the market wants. And if I'm being honest, making sure that everybody in the organization, from myself all the way down to the brand new first day on the job person, is putting the needs of the customer and the marketplace first. Mm-hmm. I would say you do that and everything else becomes, kind of ancillary, if you will.
Yeah. So your first answer or to the question was, whoever's talking to the customer at that particular time, or the prospect, right?
Yeah. Right.
What makes you feel that that's the most important person in the company at any time?
Well, because it's a moment of truth. Mm. So how that interaction goes makes a huge difference in the overall perception of value. And if the customer is, even if we're giving the customer maybe news that they don't want to hear, I lead a software company, so it's not unusual to get requests to say, I love your software, but if it could just do X, Y, or Z and change it a little bit, a lot of custom requests come through.
Yeah.
And sometimes those are difficult conversations to have because, obviously we're not a bespoke software developer. We have to make sure that we have broad market appeal. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you have to deliver difficult conversations. So I think handling those conversations with grace and with a great deal of empathy towards the customer just demonstrates that we are really in it for their benefit. Do good things and good things will happen. Mm-hmm. And so, at any point in time, the customer could talk to the first day person and not get the answer they like. The next question the next call they make could be to me, because at our company, every single people leader is on our website. And we have pictures and we have phone numbers. In my case, it's my mobile phone number because that's the only phone I use.
Yeah.
And it's out there for all the world to see. So it's
Yeah.
just radical transparency. So I really feel like, if all of us have this orientation, like when we're talking to the customer and we're taking good care of them and we're doing good things, that good things will happen.
Uh-huh.
And that just is a great way to foster teamwork and drive the greatest value for our customers over time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. When I look at the question of who the most important, it's almost the question's kind of like a little bit of a red herring, because the most important is, as a whole, in my opinion, are your people,
Yeah,
all of them, right? And I mean,
everybody,
I'm
100%.
hearing that, right? But
Yeah,
not I would say not as detailed as I would like to hear it, which doesn't mean that you don't feel that way, of course.
no one's ever
Um,
answered as the CEO, I hope, have they?
well, no, not. I mean, I talk about it all the time. I mean, that's exactly right. That is not the right answer. And that's really the difference when I look at this and talk to my clients, and when I on my own show, and as well as if when I'm being interviewed, is that you have to look at both a leadership culture and a management culture and what the distinctions are between those two, right? A leadership culture is what you just said. Well, nobody's ever responded to CEO, have they? That
Right.
would be a management culture where the CEO thinks the employees work for him or her, as opposed to a true leadership culture, which is you as the CEO or the employee of your employees.
Yeah.
You
So,
work for
so to
them.
be clear, I think I agree wholeheartedly with
Yeah.
you. The
Yeah.
reason I answered the question the way that I did
Yeah.
is because I think as a society or as a business culture, at least here in the US,
Mm-hmm.
we're in the middle of a pretty significant pivot culturally,
You don't say.
in that over the last several years, there was this heavy index on, having this employee centric culture,
Mm-hmm.
which there's nothing wrong with that. But I think what happened was we over indexed and things fell a little bit too, it got a little bit too skewed. And, things like the great resignation
Yeah.
and just the hyper competitive job
Mm-hmm.
environment,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of us got really focused on, hey, what's the company doing for me? Rather than what can I do to help the company and the marketplace win? So that was a fairly deliberate vector for me to take it from that angle because I'm really trying to drive that mindset shift
Mm-hmm.
with everybody who's on our team
Yeah.
here. Is like let's let's work together, let's support one another, and let's do what's right in the marketplace. Because when we do that, great things come our way, and
Mm-hmm.
we all grow in our career and in personal ambition, and all that good stuff happens.
Yeah. And and I think that your point, and this is not uncommon, where somebody comes up with the new shiny object and it goes too far in one direction on that all the time,
For
one
sure.
direction or the other, right? And that's what you're saying. You talk about employee centric. I prefer to use the term talent centric, and that's a little bit different, right? Where I think, at least if I'm hearing, please correct me if I'm wrong, in your description of employee centric, it has to be all about the employees, right? And they took it too far that, to your point, well, it's a really competitive marketplace out there,
Right.
right?
Right.
When I think of talent centricity, I think, look, without the right talent and without taking care of that talent, you
Yeah.
can't get from point A to point B in a straight line.
Yeah.
You're
No,
gonna, or
without a
you're,
doubt.
that if you think of your organization as a spoked wheel, the hub is your talent strategy, really. And all
Yeah.
those spokes are all your employees. If there's any kind of if those spokes aren't true, right, and tight, that
Hmm.
wheel's not going to roll in a straight line.
Agreed. Yep.
So I think that what's happened is it's to your point, it went way too far to the extreme on, well, it's got to be all about the employees or nothing. Well, there's a happy median there. And yes, if as a leader, if you are committed to building a talent centric organization and a leadership culture, the money's going to come, the sales are going to come, productivity is going to come. All those things are going to follow in its footsteps.
I think where the rubber meets the road, and I'd love to get your opinion on
Yeah.
this because it's something I just think about nonstop,
Mhm.
which is what does it mean to create a talent centric structure?
Mhm.
What are people really looking for? And I see all kinds of examples of kind of superficial things that people do to attract good talent. and then true, genuine, authentic, meaningful talent, things that help people grow and enhance their career. And so
Yeah.
I'd just like to unpack that a little bit and figure out what that means.
Yeah. What are the gimmicks can you give me an example of a gimmick that you're thinking about?
Yeah, I mean,
Get
well,
somebody in the
this
door?
will be a hot take. This will probably light a bunch of people on fire, but like working from home, for example.
Yeah.
But full disclosure, we have a lot of remote employees, and we're a hybrid right now because
Hmm.
we have some people that were grandfathered under
Hmm.
COVID,
Yeah.
who are grandfathered and they're allowed to work at home. But like every new person we bring into the organization is agreeing to work in the office, and then over time we'll make the transition. But something like that is, um, I'm a firm believer that when we're together, even if it's less convenient, when we're together, we're better because there's moments in between moments and we get to know one another. And I mean, some of the things that happen organically when you're together, for example,
Yeah.
um, that would be one. And then there's all these the cliche stuff like, a keg in the office or, foosball tables. I'm a software guy. So this stuff comes up more often than not in my
Yeah.
line of work. But, some of those things, that's what I'm referring to as the superficial stuff.
Yeah. It's funny. I've talked about this at length, and I haven't talked about this in a while, so I'm actually glad you brought it up because, I think the best example of where this started was Google,
Yeah. Well,
right?
certainly in the Bay Area. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Where they're like, "Hey, we're gonna have everything for you here, so you never have to leave the office." And when I think about that, I think, yeah, sure. Does that not look like manipulation to you?
It certainly smells like it.
Hello, it certainly smells like it. Because the more they're in the office, the more they'll, I mean, doesn't mean they're working every minute, but there's an
Yeah,
opportunity
but
to work more.
the essence of why it was done in the first place got lost,
That's right. I
and
agree.
it became this sort of expectation,
That's right. That's
and like,
exactly right.
well, hang on now, how would I work for you guys if you don't have this and that and all that kind of stuff? And
Hmm.
it's like,
And
okay, I mean,
yeah,
nothing would be more rewarding for me than to have people come in and get after it. 40, and let's be honest, 40-hour week is a big cliche. A lot of people do a few hours over that. But under no circumstances are we looking for people coming and put like in 100 hours a week.
right.
That's just not healthy for the
Yeah.
human body.
Hmm.
And I know that I have some of my best insights when I'm decompressed.
Of
Mowing my
course.
lawn is where I just have amazing, seems like to be insights. So
Yeah.
downtime is important. But so what we really are trying to do is say, let's be together at least 40 hours a week and let's
Hmm.
be excellent during that time so we can really genuinely check out
Yeah.
and give our brains that time to relax and think and expand.
Right.
And so, that is really authentic in my book.
I agree. So give me the question one more time because we're now a little bit past it. So I want to make sure I'm answering the question that you asked me to get my opinion on
Well, what is the essence of a
a
talent driven
talent-centered organization.
organization?
The
Yeah.
essence begins at the executive level, Matt, right? So the executive team is aligned. You're in that sweep rowing,
Hmm.
your rowing crew. Everybody's got their hand on an oar. And if somebody, if your CFO drops the oar and says, "Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna row anymore," your boat's
Yeah.
not going straight.
Right.
And
Well,
so
that makes
often,
sense.
hmm?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So often when I sit down with executive teams, I have a list of only about 7 questions I ask. Those questions, of course, lead to more questions.
Yeah.
But there's 7 basic questions I ask. And, the answers I get to those questions, I may interview, let's say you've got 5 people, including yourself, on your executive team. I may get 4 different answers to the same question.
Yep. Makes sense.
And they're around vision, they're around culture, they're around, you as a leader. Um, how do you believe your employees would describe you as describe yourself as a leader, and how would your employees describe you as a leader, right? And then, of course, asking those employees because there may be a lot of things that are out of alignment, and until you have that, you cannot build a talent strategy because if everybody's got their own little siloed how they want to run the company,
Oh, yeah.
you
Yeah.
cannot have an effective talent strategy to become talent centric. And that's really all it's about. It's about alignment from the CEO down to the guy that you just hired today that just started
Hmm.
working.
Sure.
And by putting those processes in place, takes a little time initially, but once they're in place, and you just kind of every few months you may need to tweak them depending on, what changes in job descriptions or whatever. But part of that is really getting the understanding of what works for FRONTSTEPS, for example, your company, right? And looking for an individual contributor, a sales, a guy carrying a bag, right?
Sure.
What are the things we need for that person to be the most effective at doing this job? And that's not just the skills or abilities. It, of course, is the cultural fit to your company. It's what drives them to become productive. Yes, I mean, salespeople should be driven by money, but that's not the only thing I don't think that drives them. Winning deals drives them.
Yeah.
Deciding
Yep.
to win a deal. And so what drives somebody in sales is not necessarily what drives one of your software developers.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly.
your talent strategy has to fit each of these different things. And that's ultimately what builds a talent-centric organization. Does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very
So,
helpful.
yeah. So, and I think that that's where so many companies they're just sort of missing the boat on that. Right? I mean, they don't want to invest in the things that are actually going to improve their company. I read an article. I'm so sorry I didn't save it. It was, I don't know, maybe 3-4 months ago. And they asked, I believe it was CEOs, what the top 3 most important things were in their business. And, you could probably guess what the first was, right?
Um, I could, but I'll let you tell me.
Revenue.
Revenue,
Money.
profitability was I was going to
Of
say. Yeah.
course. The second one, I am drawing a complete blank on. It was probably product.
Sure. Product market fit.
And coming
Yeah.
in at number 3 was their people. I just
Yeah.
thought, do you not realize if you move people to number 1, number 2, the former number 1 and number 2 will actually happen?
Yeah, that's a good point.
The,
Yeah.
so there's so much pressure, especially with startups,
Oh, yeah.
to, and especially if they got venture capitalists breathing down their neck. Money, 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 right?
Yeah. Or growth.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
yeah, growth, right?
Right. Yeah. So I agree with everything you're saying. I think that the challenge is that, as humans, which
Yeah.
presume everybody's working with, um, we're one day we could be in alignment and the next day we can't, right?
Correct.
I mean, and sometimes just the most subtle of things can knock things off balance. So
Mm-hmm.
I spend a ton of time thinking about this. And
Yeah.
I also am a firm believer that I cannot convince anyone to adopt the culture that I want to create. I think there's this great misconception that you can go out on the street, pull anybody off the street and convince them to be, excited about your culture.
I agree. Yeah,
And
wholeheartedly.
yeah, it's like for us, we really have been working hard. Our culture is that whatever we want, whatever we do, whatever market we serve, we want to be number one in that market.
Mm-hmm.
There's absolutely no prize for second, third, or fourth place. So, our we just had a leadership conference kickoff in January. We flew all the leaders in from all over the country. And we got everybody these cool North Face jackets because, everybody loves to walk around with the brand on.
Yeah, of course.
And
Yeah.
on the sleeve, we kind of put our leadership motto, which is one vision, one goal, market leader.
I love it.
And that we use that as an anchor point,
Mm-hmm.
and we're very upfront and honest about everybody who's interviewing with us and everybody who's here. And we say our goal as a company is to be the market leader. And we want people our culture is we want people who wake up every morning and are not just looking necessarily for a paycheck, but looking to be on a winning team and be number one in the marketplace.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people who walk in and they say, "Hey, I like what you guys do. And hey, your office is pretty cool. And yeah, you do have snacks. And actually, look at that. There's a keg and all that kind of stuff." But it's like, yeah, that's all superficial,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you don't fundamentally get up in the morning and have this natural desire to win and be number one and do the sacrifices or, be willing to make sacrifices to get there and be part of a team and,
Mm-hmm.
and support your teammate when they're down and then accept help from them when you're down and really work together to be an incredible winning team,
Mm-hmm.
then not everybody is built that way. I totally
Right.
get it. So, we're a kind of company where I say it used to be 1 in 10 is really 1% out of 10 is probably someone who fits well with us. I'm starting to think it might be more like 1 out of 20.
Really?
Just simply, well, and that's not I'm not trying to make that an indictment of the workforce by any
Okay.
means. I'm just simply saying that, you know, I think most of us appreciate sports analogies because they're relatable.
Mhm.
And like there are just some teams that say, we're going to get together from top to bottom, from the person who just started today all the way up to the CEO. We don't care. We're all a team. We're all business partners. We're going to win no matter what. We're going to support each other no matter what,
Mhm.
and make no excuses and no compromises in order to get to where we need to go. And that's just not everybody looks at their career that way. So
Yeah, and I think I would give you that, Matt, but I also think I would push back a little bit on um, how you're sort of saying, well, maybe 1 in 10, or 1 in 20 are really exactly what is a, let's call it a cultural fit for lack of better term. And I think that what people don't always realize is what culture really is, right? And as you're that's, and of course that's part of your talent strategy, because the
yeah,
reality is in the first 18 months, turnover, more people turn over. Over 50% of people turn over in the first 18 months at a company for reasons having nothing to do with their skills and abilities.
yeah, that makes sense. I
Okay.
would agree with that.
Which
Yep,
leaves us with culture. So what is culture? Okay.
yeah,
And culture is part of that. To your whole point. I hope nobody's ever said that the CEO is the most important guy in the company, right? Because your culture is I mean, you can't, if you've got two people sitting next to each other and one feels X about politics and one feels Y about politics, that could, the question is, do we talk about that at work? Can we even have a conversation about that if we're on different sides of the political spectrum? Because if you may have people that would then spew something about that's going to really piss somebody else off, and that's damaging to your culture.
yeah.
So, part of that culture is, you're not going to hire everybody who feels the same way, nor should you.
Oh
But
yeah,
kind of
I
setting the
guarantee you
setting the
don't.
benchmark of what's appropriate and effective and what's not.
For sure. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. What we, so what we try to focus on when we're here together is we
Yeah.
say we all come from different backgrounds and
Hmm.
different opinions and you know, but when we're here together, we're all on a mission to win our market.
Yes.
That's really that's the focus. That's the
Yeah.
beauty of coming in and spending excuse me, that's the beauty of coming in and spending like 40 hours, like time boxing it and spending
Hmm.
the work week
Hmm.
together and saying, let's be awesome during this time together on the mission that
Hmm.
we're here to serve.
Yeah.
And so that we can have that time in our personal lives to go pursue those things that we're
Hmm.
passionate about. I mean, to your point, I look at things like fire departments, police departments, military organizations. Those organizations are filled with people from all kinds of different
Yes.
walks of life.
Hmm.
But gosh darn it, when they put on that uniform and they
That's
go
right.
out on that
They work
mission,
as one.
they work as one. And
Yeah.
then and I don't see any reason why sports teams are another analogy, but
Mhm.
I don't see any reason why we can't accomplish that in a work environment. I just don't know in a corporate or a commercial environment if anybody ever asks that question and suggests that we focus on the mission, because that really is a great peacekeeper when we're all aligned that way.
I completely agree. I mean, you're completely 100% on target on that. And the
Yeah,
sports team analogy is a great thing, or the civil servant, right? I mean,
yeah,
I had buddies that were firefighters back in New Jersey that I still keep in touch with, and these guys were very different in many ways.
oh yeah,
But man, let
100%.
me tell you, they went to a fire, they worked as one unit. That was it. That's all they could think about,
All about the
regardless
mission.
of how one felt about something or how another felt about something else, right?
So
And
when it
I
comes
think
to
we've
talent,
lost that in this country generally, but
we'll see. I'm optimistic. I'm always
Mhm.
optimistic that every day's a new day and we can
Yeah.
get after it in a different way. If we
Mhm.
just have to choose to do it that way. You know, shoot, back to the talent thing. I
Yeah.
think to be a talent centric organization to us is to invest in people and people's
Mhm.
success,
That's right.
because the superficial stuff might get somebody to sign the contract or
Yeah.
sign the agreement to come to work with you and
Yeah.
even get them to fill out the paperwork on the first day.
Mhm.
But to have that true, genuine commitment day after day after day, we find that people need to believe that they're a part of something
Mhm.
bigger
Mhm.
than just themselves individually.
Yeah.
There's a real energy and excitement about doing something big, especially with a team, and constant growth. Even if that constant growth comes through discomfort and
Mhm.
challenging ourselves to do things that we're not comfortable doing, we as a team really work to push our boundaries collectively and push one another and support one another in pushing through those boundaries. And that to us, that is how we create a talent centric organization.
Mhm. Yeah,
Because if somebody comes in and they're just doing a job because they've got a skill, well, eventually they're going to find something that they don't like, and they'll say, well, if I'm just getting paid to do the skill, I might as well go somewhere else. But if I'm here as part of a team, as part of a bigger mission, and I'm evolving and fighting through difficulties with my teammates, that's a much more deep connection, and it helps us build that talent bench.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that is probably why that in the 8.5 years that you have been at Front Steps, you did not start out as the CEO.
I did not know.
You started out as VP of product.
I
And the
did,
CEO is
yes.
the fifth job you've had since you've been there.
I've had quite a few, yes.
And I think it's that, your whole attitude and how you look at things is what's had you, rise up the food chain. Of course, you've been a founder before, so it's not like you haven't, been at the top of a company. But it's this is just a testament to, why you've moved up the food chain at your particular company, I
Oh,
believe.
well,
It's
thank you.
that entire attitude. No, really. I mean,
Well, the founder experience fed into that big
of
time.
course it did.
Because when you're a founder, you're leaping off the cliff, right? And you're trying to build the airplane before you hit the ground. And that founder experience really crystallized what matters most.
Mhm.
And what matters most is producing results. And if you're hyper focused on producing results, then you think about things like a talent driven organization.
Mhm.
I'm just so blessed that I didn't, find a different path where I was shielded from adversity,
Mhm.
because adversity is what caused me to really get sober about what matters
Yeah.
and really index on that hard.
Mhm.
And it provides tremendous clarity. I think I always, and sometimes one of my favorite stories is saying, when I had to make sure that payroll hit, that made everything in the world crystal clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
And I think that for those who are listening, we haven't really talked about that much about your background, but you founded your company and sold it 3 years afterward, and then stayed on with the acquirer for another 8 years,
I did. Yeah.
which is really rare for a founder to do that. Usually, it's sort of the kind of required 2-year contract that you stay on,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that you stayed on there for another 8 years before joining Front Steps. So, I find that, and I think, I look at that, and of course, I've known you for a number of years, and your career, and I think that really, it's those types of things that a lot of founders, and then founders who eventually move into CEO positions with different types of companies, are the ones who are doing the best at, right? I have one more question
Yeah.
to talk to you about before we cut out here.
Okay.
So let's bring it back to kind of why founders and CEOs listening should care about this. Okay.
Sure.
What
Sure.
is the mindset? Why is this mindset, right? That we've been talking about, so crucial to a company's bottom line?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a law of physics in my book,
Yeah.
because look, you can go out and you can look to make a quick buck, and do a startup that catches fire, and maybe like users, daily active users, whatever. It like takes off, and money starts flowing in, and all that jazz. I mean, those things happen. However, statistically, most of the time, it's through just deep persistence and commitment, and just an inner purpose to say, I will
Mm-hmm.
not quit, I will not fail.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually where most people find success.
Commitment.
And commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I sold the company, Routsmith, the company I
Mm-hmm.
founded, and my mom, who, by the way, God bless her, she was terrified of me starting the company in the
Yeah.
first place. And she called me one day and begged me to shut it all down and go back to the
You never told me that.
and I was like, well, I appreciate it. Thank you. I know you're doing this because you love me, but that ship's already sailed. I'm up to my neck already, Mom. So we got to see this one through.
Yeah.
But she called me up after the exit, and she said, well, what was the one thing that you that made the difference? And I had to think about it. Honestly, I wasn't sure at that point. I was still kind of like basking in the afterglow. But when I step back and think about it, I think it's persistence.
Mm-hmm.
And so she and my stepfather did a really cool plaque for me that's about persistence, and it's in the other room. Actually, it's quote by, I believe, Calvin Coolidge, but
Mm-hmm.
just it's total grit. And you you ask the question, like, why is this mindset so important? Because every single day, and I'm not telling the founders anything that they don't already know,
Yeah.
but every single day it's going to be full of emotion, from the world is coming to an end to nothing can stop us today. And if you don't have this mindset of just complete devotion to the mission and getting through it, um, the good outcomes for not only you, but the people who've invested in you,
Yeah.
the people who you've convinced to come
Yeah.
along on this adventure that you have a commitment to, your family, your friends, all the sacrifices that you make, it really, it's a very sacrificial kind of role that you're taking on when you do it. But the rewards are tremendous. I mean,
Yeah.
being able to sit back and say, this is what I did, it's one of the great accomplishments of my life. So
Yeah, I think that's so important, and it is. Commitments are really, a lot of people don't really understand the importance of commitment, and the difference between that and want, right? Commitment's gonna, just as you described, going and going and going in the face of no, this didn't work. I'm really disappointed. God, I had a shitty day.
yeah,
Whatever those things might be, right? And I think back to when I pivoted away from doing, full-time headhunting into the business I'm in now. Somebody said, well, my broker said to me one day, well, what if, what's your plan B? And I said, dude, I got none.
I'm all
This
in.
is it.
I'm all in. That's right.
I'm all in, and you have to be all in. And, how often people get all in, and, I've heard so many stories of, oh God, I was on my last $50 in my checking account, and how difficult it is. And it is not, entrepreneurship is not for everybody. And if you're going to do it, you really need to do it, in my opinion, the right way.
Yeah, yeah. And as far as, just to throw this out there as a word of encouragement for
Yeah.
everyone, my business partner, Jeff, when I had this startup, he always had this saying, look, Matt, because I can be prone to be a little emotional. He would say, look, Matt, things are never as good or as bad as you think they're going to
Yeah.
be. So if you can like force yourself to kind of realize that most of the time things work out, very few people who have a real genuine desire to win and are willing to make the sacrifices and are willing to be persistent and keep their ears open
Yep.
and really do what's best for the marketplace and their clients and their employees and stuff like that. When you have that kind of orientation, how many of those people lose?
Yeah. Right.
It's not a ton.
Not a lot. Thanks for watching Evolving Your Workplace. Do you have a topic you'd like to discuss? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to click subscribe and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes.